Welcome to another episode of Inside Access Control, sponsored by SIA. Extremely excited today to have Pierre Bourgeix join me today. He's the CTO and founder of ESI Convergent. We're going to talk about a subject very timely, in my opinion, and Pierre believes too. We had a conversation before this around this that it speaks to what we talked about in my last newsletter in a lot of ways around this security theater, health theater side, the sort of now what do you do? And this reminds me of the Portlandia episode where you just put a bird on it. Like everybody thinks now they're just going to put a thermal camera on top of everything. And then magically we're all safe from everything that's going on the health side. And we all know that that's not true. And Pierre brings a ton of industry knowledge, a lot of history with not necessarily pandemics, but maybe you'll get into that. But when tragedies and things happen, the response that comes from it, and the need to be careful. So Pierre, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. And
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for many years, I think that the first encounter I had with this was during SARS. We had worked with a few companies in Asia and the Middle East. That was, compared to this, frankly, not as bad, unfortunately. But at the time, the issue of dealing with contagious disease and how to deal with at least determining some form of process behind detection was important. But unfortunately, as what we're facing today, we're getting a rush to market of virtually every Tom, Dick, or Harry, solution. And, some of which are, I have to do the research on a company for one of my clients just last week, a food manufacturing company, very large in the US, and said, we're interested in using this product. And I says, okay, let me just take a couple hours. It took me about an hour. Company was formed in 2020, April. And before that, they were doing thermal, yes, for, guess what? The industrial industry, meaning they were looking at thermal in regards to detecting heat on a bearing. And I'm going, how does that equate to temperature of the skin temperature of a human being? And how does it at all deal with how you deal with HHS standards on not only privacy, but also health? And so anyway, you're right.
I think it's coincidence. It's just
coincidence. Yeah. Just coincidence. Yeah, just like the radiological devices and the bomb detection devices right after 9/11, and which we, I remember Jim Henry and I talking about this, going, well, what on earth do these guys think they're doing? 10 years later, everybody's in lawsuits, because none of it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. So before you dive more into it, just real quick, so everyone understands your background, because I think it's important to what you're talking about. Give us a little bit of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I started in the industry about 30 years ago. I started in the RAND Corporation, a think tank with the U.S. government. Went from there to the State Department Security Services teams. Went from there to consulting, and then worked for large integrators. I was on the banking team for ADT for a period of time in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Atlanta, Georgia. And from there, I did 4 base assessments for the U.S. military, U.S. Navy, Marine Corps in the Middle East. I speak Arabic and French fluently, so that kind of helped. And then, I had an epiphany and thought that, IT is where it's at. So I went into IT security, then cybersecurity, and then came back, and now we're doing convergence assessments with ESI Convergent. So, that was after we sold, there was a company called Secure State, which I was part of, and it was sold, and we moved into this program. So, and frankly, as a CTO founder, I work with the technology pieces. I still do assessments, mostly on the governance side, because I appreciate governance, policy and procedures. I'm kind of those boring guys. I like to read stuff, and also apply it to how we actually do stuff. So I become the big pain, big PETA, I'm called sometimes, to one of my clients. Where I'm always the guy that's finding, why are you doing this, and how are you going to do it?
If you were to look a little bit into the future after sort of the hysteria goes on, like what is good going to look like? And then I think if we could then back up a little bit to say, you know, if I'm in the middle of hysteria, like a lot of people are currently now, what do I need to do to kind of see through the noise, and make sure I'm applying the right type of technology and solution?
Well, I think one of the major issues we're having right now, because of course everybody's in a rush because they think they have to solve it right now. I think that you've got to step back. You've got to look at assessing your situation, and either do an internal assessment and you review how you're going to deal with your HR department in terms of the employees, how are you going to detect and how are you going to process people through the entry, what's your workload going to look like, what's acceptable for your business model, right? People are going to say, look, I can't do what I used to do only 2 years ago in terms of volume. And that goes for restaurants, to gyms, to tenants, the multi-story tenant buildings, shopping centers. We have to really apply this process and say, look, if we're going to have more social distancing, if we're going to have a process of wearing masks or not wearing masks, because remember, we are a free country and civil liberties do count, even though a lot of people want to suppress them just because they're worried or they're concerned. I can say that this is a short-term concern, because I can tell you that a year from now, I can almost imagine how many lawsuits there are going to be from this based on my civil liberties were crushed. I was processed through an entry point and I caught COVID-19 and I gave it to my dad who died. I mean, it's amazing what will take place, especially when a good lawyer comes to your door and says, I am here to sue anybody. I'm going to take care of them, right? Well, you got to watch two things. You got to look at the technology you're thinking of using. Before you do that, you make sure you have policies and processes first. And HIPAA. I mean, who's signing consent forms to allow you to do something with your own personal information, your PHI, public health information? I don't see that happening right now. Everybody just wants to put a thermal camera at a door.
Speaking specifically of the access control industry, most of the interfaces that we've had have been, black boxes on the wall and cards. And at the most extent, you had a visitor management system that was really more of a clipboard and was used to collect NDAs, but that was like primarily it. So now these sort of rich interfaces are going to change. So I think the visitor management systems are going to be far more important in this. And if you're an access control, if you're an access control system and you don't really do that now, you're a little bit late and you should probably get moving. Or there are some good partners out there and it's a great partnership opportunity. And some of the products that I've seen on the marketplace make a lot of sense on that end. The second part of that is you brought up HIPAA, and I'm wondering if all of a sudden this turns into like an OSHA thing too, because I'm curious where I think we will see a lot of this come through is through workman's comp on that end as well. And that's another area
100%,
where, 100%. Sick syndrome, I think it's sick building syndrome, whereas primarily air and mold and the rest of it. Now it's these, door handles and the rest of it. So people are looking to get a hold of you to find out more. Where's the best way to do that?
Well, if you go to esiconvergent.com, that's our website, or Pierre at esiconvergent.com. And that's the best way to reach us.
Thank you, Pierre. Fast, a lot of information, some solutions, some thought provocation, but that's why I wanted to talk to you. So I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll keep an eye on this.
Thank you.